Welcome to Fan for Racing Radio. I am Fan for Racing Sharon, and joining me today is Jay Hughesman, and we are going to be talking about the Kansas preview for the NASCAR Cup Series this weekend. So, Jay, I bet you've been already checking out the entry list for this weekend.
I have, and I'm really excited about what I get to tell you here. Some of it we already mentioned from the Truck Series preview, but the entry list for the Advent Health 400 NASCAR Cup Series race at Kansas is listing 38 teams and drivers for the 48 spots. You got your 36 charter teams, 2 open teams, though. The number 33, that's going to be Jesse Love for his second start, and that was apparently off a recommendation from Kyle Busch, from what I heard. And then the number 67, if you haven't heard that number, because it hasn't been used, I don't think yet, it is a 2311 Racing, and it's going to be Corey Heim.
So that's pretty excited. That Advent Health 400 at Kansas Speedway is this Sunday, May the 11th, and that's Mother's Day, by the way. They'll be racing on the 1.5-mile asphalt oval at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, at 1:30 p.m. Eastern on Fox Sports 1 and Fox Deportes, as well as MRN and SiriusXM NASCAR Channel 90, they are going to have the pre-race coverage. So they'll race a distance of 400.5 miles, 267 laps. Stage 1 ends on lap 80. Stage 2 will be 85 laps and they'll end on lap 165. And then the final stage will be 102 laps, ending on lap 267. Now, the Cup Series practice and Busch Light Pole qualifying will be on Amazon Prime, MRN, and SiriusXM at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday, May the 10th. And then, of course, the race will be on Sunday. We've got some great insights and storylines here to talk about, Jay.
And there's a lot of it, though, because this weekend marks the 39th running of a NASCAR Cup Series race at Kansas Speedway, and it's the 25th since the repave, which followed the 2012 season.
Okay, and the last 6 Cup Series races at Kansas Speedway have been run by 6 different drivers. Kyle Larson, with 2 victories, is the only repeat winner in the last 9 races. The record for Cup Series winners at Kansas is 7, and it's happened twice, 2002 to 2008 and 2020 to 2023.
And I hope to see that extended this weekend. I love seeing that, and it's a kind of track that, again, different drivers get a catch on. Nobody seems to be able to dominate it, with the exception of maybe Larson.
Exactly.
Now, a total of 20 different drivers have won a Cup race at Kansas, and 9 of those 20 are active this weekend. Denny Hamlin's got 4, 2012, 19, 2020, and 23. Joey Logano, 2014, 15, and 2020. Kyle Busch in 2016 and 21 for a pair, as well as Brad Keselowski in 2011 and 19. And then Ross Chastain in 24, Tyler Reddick in 2023, Bubba Wallace in 2022, Kyle Larson in 2021, and Chase Elliott in 2018, as they all have single wins.
All right, pretty amazing. Christopher Bell, he won the pole for the last 3 races at Kansas. The last driver to win the pole in 4 straight races at a track was Kyle Larson, who did it at Sonoma between 2017 and 2022. Christopher Bell has really had a pretty good start to the season already. And so I'm sure he'll be looking to make that 4th straight pole if at all possible.
And he'd love to put his name next to Kevin Harvick, as he was the last driver to win 3 straight poles at Kansas, running from 2013 to 14. And a driver has never won 4 straight at Kansas. Now, if Christopher Bell already has 4 Kansas poles, that ranks second all time to Harvick, who has 5.
Now, we mentioned the different winners. Well, there's 19 different drivers who have won a Cup Series pole at Kansas. 7 of the 19 are active this weekend. They include Christopher Bell. We mentioned his in 22, 23, and the 24 sweep. Joey Logano in 2015 and 18. William Byron in 23. Tyler Reddick in 22. And Ryan Blaney goes back to 2017. Brad Keselowski back to 2015. And AJ Allmendinger had his in 2012.
Here we have an exciting stat. The pass for the win came in the final 2 laps in 3 of the last 4 Kansas Speedway races, including the including 2 last lap passes.
All right, and the closest finish in NASCAR Cup Series history came at Kansas Speedway just last May, 1 year ago. Kyle Larson beat Chris Buescher by 1/1000th of a second. That's pretty incredible.
That was a heck of a finish.
That was a heck of a finish. It was.
Now, there were 37 lead changes at Kansas in May of 2023, and that's the most in a 400-mile on the 1.5-mile track in series history.
Now, the driver leading the most laps has failed to win the last 5 Kansas races, the longest streak ever at Kansas Speedway. So leading the most laps does not necessarily equate to a victory.
We talked about Corey Heim getting in a 2311 racing machine. 3 of that team's 8 Cup Series wins have come at Kansas Speedway, and all 3 were in the last 6 races.
And Denny Hamlin has finished inside the top 10 in the last 7 Kansas Cup Series races. That's the longest active streak.
Alex Bowman, he's got 10 top 10s at Kansas, and that's his most at any track.
Chase Elliott's 12 top 10 finishes are his second most at a track, behind 13 that he has at Martinsville Speedway.
And we got to shift over to his teammate William Byron, as his 8 top 10 finishes at Kansas is tied for second most at a track, behind 9 at Phoenix.
And Tyler Reddick, he led in the last 7 Kansas Cup Series races. That's tied for the longest streak by a driver at Kansas. Christopher Bell led in the last 6 Kansas races. That's the second longest active streak at that track, behind Reddick, who has 7.
We talked a little bit about Kyle Larson, and I'll let you know his 9 wins on a 1.5-mile tracks rank 5th among active drivers. All 9 wins came in his 32 starts on them with Hendrick Motorsports, and that's 29% a win percentage on them with Hendrick.
Pretty impressive. Kyle Larson is the only driver to finish inside the top 10 in all 3 1.5-mile races so far this season.
And you got a theme here, is Kyle Larson's average finish of 4.67 on 1.5-mile tracks in 2025 is 5 positions better than second place William Byron, as his is 9.67.
Wow. Joey Logano has 2. He's the only repeat winner in the last 7 races on 1.5-mile tracks.
I love that kind of competition. Nobody's showing pure dominance. Again, maybe Kyle Larson, but there's at least a mixture. Now, again, I always get the Ford ones. A Ford driver has won only 1 of the last 11 races at Kansas, and that was Joey Logano back in 2020. Hopefully we see some more of Ford breaking this some of these streaks that they're on of not good.
Yes. Well, Joey Logano finally got a win. So I'm happy for him that he's not being talked about as being winless this season. Now, Spire Motorsports won the pole for 2 of the 3 1.5-mile tracks so far this season. But I think Christopher Bell might have something to say about that.
I think so. Now, Kyle Busch has finished outside the top 10 in the last 7 races on 1.5-mile tracks. He's on an 11-race streak without a top 5 finish on 1.5-mile tracks. We know he's having a tough season so far. Again, maybe we'll see him snap out of that.
That would be good to see for sure. Now, the final lead change came within the last 2 laps in 5 of 11 races so far this season. So it has been an exciting season so far.
We talked about Kyle Larson. He's part of Hendrick Motorsports, and their 1,135 laps led in 2025 leads all teams by 419 laps and are the team's most since 2010.
They are off to a pretty good start. 27 top 10 finishes are the most ever by Hendrick Motorsports through 11 races. That is just amazing.
And it's not just about finishes, as Alex Bowman with 2 and William Byron with 2 HMS drivers, are the only repeat pole winners in 2025.
And Hendrick Motorsports won the pole for 4 of the last 8 races so far this season. They have just been phenomenal this year. I was talking earlier in the season, Jay, about how I thought this might be the heyday for the Gen 7 car. I think it's turning out to be the heyday for Hendrick Motorsports.
It's certainly, they are the ones making hay with it, I'll tell you that.
Yes.
We'll break that down among a couple of drivers here. Kyle Larson leads all drivers with the 596 laps led in 2025 in Cup and 440 laps led in the Xfinity Series.
William Byron, a Hendrick Motorsports driver, ranked second in 2025 with laps led at 386.
Well, I'll counter back with Kyle Larson as he leads all drivers with 7 top 5 finishes and 8 top 10 finishes on the year. His 7 top 5 finishes, 8 top 10 finishes, and those 596 laps led are the most ever through 11 races into a season.
Incredible. Well, let's continue with Kyle Larson. He's 148 laps away from 10,000 laps led in Cup. 67% of his laps led came in his 5 seasons with Hendrick Motorsport.
And HMS is doing it all the way through the race, as their drivers have won 6 of the last 8 stages as well.
William Byron, well, his average finish of 8.91 in 2025 leads all drivers and is the best by Hendrick Motorsports driver through 11 races since Jimmy Johnson in 2013, who came in at 6.7. So again, to be compared against the likes of Jimmy Johnson at Hendrick Motorsports, no less, is pretty amazing.
You're right. That's saying something there. Now, HMS has had at least one car finish in the top 5 in the last 19 races, and that is the team's 3rd longest streak all time and the longest since the team's longest streak at 24, and that ranged from 2012 to 2013. When you think about some of the drivers HMS has had, yeah, that's pretty solid.
It is. Continuing with Hendrick Motorsports is the only team with at least one car finishing in the top 5 in all 11 races so far this season. No other team has had at least one car finish in the top 10 in all 11 races this year. So the only team, Jay, they're just dominant.
And I'll give you the stats that show that is the top 3 drivers based on average finish are William Byron at 8.9, Kyle Larson is at 10.6, and Chase Elliott right there with him at 11.4.
Amazing. 3 of the top 4 in points are Hendrick Motorsports drivers. William Byron, of course, is first. Second is Kyle Larson. And Chase Elliott is in 4th place. Alex Bowman is still in the top 10, though. He's 10th in the series point standings. So all 4 of their drivers are in the top 10.
And to break down what I mentioned earlier about the stage wins so far for 2025, Kyle Larson is leading all drivers with 6 stage wins, while William Byron ranks 2nd with 3. How about we talk about somebody else?
Okay, let's talk about Austin Dillon. Austin Dillon finished top 10 in the last 3 races, which is good for him. He's kind of been on a streak as well. That's tied for his longest top 10 streak in the Cup Series.
And we still got to talk about Team Penske, as they have 3 top 5 finishes in the last 2 races. And that includes 2 wins in these first 9 races of 2025. The team had only 3 top 5 finishes.
Yeah, big turnaround for Team Penske. I'm glad to see that. Joe Gibbs Racing led only 16 laps on 1.5 mile tracks so far this season. The team's fewest through 3 1.5 mile races since 2017.
Now, we talked about some drivers having some dominant seasons. Brad Keselowski having a rough season. He's looking for his first top 10 finish of the year. He's had 4 top 5s and 5 top 10s after 11 races in 2024. Just not having that same magic.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a rough start there. The 305 lead changes through 11 races this year are 4th most all time.
This one's kind of interesting, Sharon. The race winner has led less than 10 laps 6 times this year, and that's more than any other season through 11 races. Again, we're just not seeing dominant performances like we have.
Yeah, that's a remarkable stat. 4 races have ended with the last lap pass this year. That's the most ever through 11 races as well.
And the competition is just as tight for poles, as we've had 9 different pole winners through 11 races here in 2025. That's tied for most all time.
And for only the second time since 1983, the Wood brothers have led at least 150 laps in the season's first 11 races. They also 169 in 2025. They had 233 laps led in 2017.
If you're any kind of long-term or history fan, you got to love that for the Wood brothers.
Yes.
Now, Zane Smith's average finish through 11 races here in 2025 is 9 positions better than it was through the 11 races to start 2024.
Good for Zane Smith. Legacy Motor Club's 5 top 10 finishes so far this season is 1 less than their 24 season when they had 6. Their 3 top 5s are more than 23 and 24 combined when they had only 2. So they've had some bright spots so far this season.
They certainly have, and they appear to still be on the upswing. So looking forward to how they finish out the season, no doubt.
All right. Usually they give us who the dignitaries are going to be at the track, but we don't have that this week. Yes, there is going to be some close competition and probably some high drama. That usually typifies the Cup Series races at Kansas. So even though Chevrolet driver Kyle Larson won last year's spring race at Kansas Speedway by the closest margin, we talked about that really close finish with Chris Buescher, Larson still thinks Toyota drivers have an edge when at that 1.5 mile track. So we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Well, and it depends on your viewpoint. You could make an argument for all 3 manufacturers entering Sunday's Advent Health 400 at this intermediate speedway at Kansas Speedway. We'll wait and see how it plays out this weekend.
Yeah, like you say, it could be any one of the 3 manufacturers. Even though Chevrolet drivers swept last year's Kansas events, with Ross Chastain winning in the fall, there's ample reason for Larson to take a look at the Toyotas as fierce competition. Before 2024, 4 different Camry drivers, we're talking Kurt Busch, Bubba Wallace, Denny Hamlin, and Tyler Reddick, won 4 straight races at that track.
Now, that's the good news. The bad news is, though, Wallace has acknowledged that his number 2311 racing team has lost a bit of that magic that propelled him to the second and most recent of his 2 career wins in 2022. Maybe that had something to do with Booty Barker. He's got a new crew chief, so we'll see if they can get it back.
That's a good point. On the flip side of Larson's win, Buescher prefers not to dwell on his runner-up finish, and you can't blame him because it's such a huge, huge disappointment to lose a race at 1/1000th of a second. That is the closest I think I've ever heard.
It is, and I know we hit on this earlier, but I want to reiterate it one more time. Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota driver Christopher Bell, he's got the last 3 poles at Kansas Speedway, which is now hosting the second of 3 straight Cup Series points races on 1.5-mile intermediate speedways.
All right. And the last driver to win 4 straight poles at the track was Larson, and we talked about this earlier. He did it at Sonoma Raceway in 2017 through 2022.
And we mentioned Joey Logano, last week's winner at Texas Motor Speedway, is the only Ford driver to visit victory lane at Kansas in the last 12 races. We said you look for all 3 manufacturers. Again, Ford, though, might be on the lacking side.
Yes. However, with Josh Berry winning for the Woods brothers at Las Vegas, 4 drivers have claimed victory in 2 of the 3 1.5 milers so far this season. So that kind of plays in Ford's favor. Larson's victory at Homestead Miami Speedway accounts for the other one.
Now, no matter whom you favor, Kansas Speedway is a venue that's likely to produce that high drama. Not only does the track have that closest Cup finish in Cup Series history to its credit, but again, they featured 37 lead changes in the spring race of 2023. That's the most on a 1.5-mile speedway in series history as well, using the conventional downforce competition package.
Okay, now when Ross Chastain triumphed from the 20th starting position last year, it broke a string of 9 straight winners from the top 10 positions on the grid. So Ross Chastain kind of broke the mold there.
It did. And again, I'd like to see Ford a little more competitive. They're going to have to prove it, but if they're going to do it, we've seen Team Penske be strong this year. Maybe Ryan Blaney, he's the one of the Penske or an affiliate with the Wood brothers that doesn't have the win yet this year. And he's run strong. Just again, that being able to finish it.
Yeah, you read my mind when I was starting to think already about the race winner picks, and Ryan Blaney was going to be my pick. He is due for a win, and when you talk about being owed a win, I think NASCAR owes him a win for sure. He has had such good performance without a win so far this season. So if it wasn't for bad luck, he'd have no luck at all.
Well, and if I were going to go with a Toyota, since Bubba Wallace seems to think his team has lost a little bit of that magic, I'll go with his teammate then of Tyler Reddick. Reddick, again, has been solid, quiet, but solid throughout the year. Right now, I think, sitting 5th in points. So we'll see if he can put his name at the top in the list as far as winners and add himself to the playoffs.
Well, if you're going to talk about Toyotas, I'm going to go with Christopher Bell. He'll get the pole and maybe even win that race.
Now, wouldn't that be something to see him? Because that would mess up a whole lot of stats and streaks if he were to win from the pole.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, which Hendrick Motorsports driver are you going to take? Because if you're talking Chevy, that's what you're talking about. Man, I'd have to say pull for Chase Elliott to do it, but I think it's a toss-up between William Byron and Kyle Larson. You heard the stats we just went over. They've just been phenomenal this year. And Chase Elliott and Alex Bowman are part of that, but those two are really at the forefront.
And going back to Fords, I would have to say maybe Chris Buescher will be looking for some redemption this weekend.
I'm sure he is. Unfortunately, part of RFK Racing, both Preece has been the front runner there for RFK, and he, I'm sure, has some redemption he'd just like to do on his season. Started out real strong, has had a couple of hiccups, a DQ. But yeah, as an organization, we know where Brad's at, and man, I wish I could fix his problems for him because, yeah, he can't get out of his own way at this point. But I think Ryan Preece has really been. Now, again, Chris Buescher, we know he's part of that closest race in history. There, too, kind of like Tyler Reddick. Chris Buescher is right now 12th in points, not quite as strong, but solid, right in that 12th, 15th place, just trucking along. We haven't seen him rip off wins like we did a few years ago.
Yes, indeed. It's going to be a fun race to watch. I think Kansas always puts on a pretty good show. And I can't wait, Jay.
And they talked about that this morning, coming off of Texas a little bit tighter, narrower track where drivers have to maintain a little bit closer proximity. Kansas is one that we've seen in a lot of variety of ways. The wider track, you got multiple lanes, so the drivers don't have to be on top of one another, which tends to bring out a lot of cautions. Not for necessarily aggressive driver, it's just you get too close, the air shifts something, and you have a wreck. So hopefully we don't see as many cautions there at Kansas this weekend. And like you said, we just get to see pure racing.
Those 1.5 miles, I think, put on some pretty good races. Okay, so Jay, is there anything more that you wanted to talk about before we move on?
No, I think we pretty much covered it.
All right, so that completes all of our previews for this weekend. We have already done the ARCA Menards at Kansas, our Menards series at Kansas, as well as the Truck Series at Kansas, and now the Cup Series at Kansas. Xfinity is on break for a couple of weeks, so we'll have to wait for their next preview. But Jay and I will be back on Monday with some of these reviews along with Sal. And then, of course, we'll have the Hot Topic Sound Off segment with Chris Crichton and Jay and myself as we talk about all the latest hot topics in the NASCAR world. And that will start at 10 o'clock Eastern, 9 o'clock Central, and 7 o'clock Pacific time for us to kind of dig in and kind of hash out all those hot topics.
Looking forward to that. And we went through all the previews without even one Wizard of Oz reference. So
amazing. You did good, Jay.
It was too easy. You can't always go with the low-hanging fruit, right?
That's true. All right. Well, I want to say thank you to everybody for tuning in. We really appreciate you taking the time to hear what we have to say. We enjoy doing this. And Jay, are you going to be at the racetrack this weekend?
Well, I'm going to try and put those thumbs up again, but weather has been in the area and actually still was tonight. So I'm on standby. We are supposed to race at Jackson Motor Speedway this weekend. However, I'll have to check in tomorrow and Saturday up until probably race time.
Okay. You guys have had kind of a rough start to the season this year.
Yeah, Chris talked about it on Monday night. The weather has not been particularly cooperative with dirt track racing as of recent here.
Okay. Well, we hope it gets better and maybe the rain will pass you by this time. I also want to just mention to everybody, we did an interview earlier this week with Jan Qualkenbush, who is the team owner for Jan's Towing and Racing, with drivers Kyle Keller and Robbie Keneally, who we've also interviewed, by the way. And so if you haven't looked at that interview, I'd encourage everybody to take a listen to it, because he does get into how he got into racing, why he's in the ARCA West Series, and the kind of support that he gets on a shoestring budget is pretty phenomenal. And he also gives us a tour of his race shop. So it's an interesting interview, and I'd really encourage everybody to take a listen.
Most certainly would as well. Again, it was really interesting, as you said, to not just get that inside perspective, but I feel a very different perspective than what we see from most race teams.
Yes, indeed. So with that, Jay, I think we're pretty much done for now until Monday.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you Monday. Looking forward to it, and looking forward to hearing from Chris. I know last week we had actually, it was kind of surprising. The first topic, I thought he was going to be not on the same page as what you and I were when we talked about it, and he was. He was on the same page. We had a couple of later, further on into the night, where we definitely had some differing opinions. We're still friends, but we had some differing opinions for sure.
Yes, yes, we did, and we had a little bit of passion in there too.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, we'll see you in the next video, Jay. Take
All
care
right.
and enjoy your weekend.